Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Capital G here with a slightly different video idea for you. So what we've done today is that I was going through some of the War of the Spark spoilers that have been shared, at least here on Deck Stats. Not every card that's been spoiled so far is on the system yet, but I've picked a few, and what I've decided to do is pair some of the individual cards with commanders, or if the card from this set is already a legendary creature, I found an older card to pair with it. And these are just some EDH ideas that I want to share and see if these would be popular with everyone going forward. Now, of course, everything in this set will be able to pair with Atraxa, because proliferate and because there's a lot of +1/+1 synergies in this set. There are tons of planeswalkers, of course. So if you are playing a more, it doesn't matter if it's +1/+1 themed or planeswalker themed, a Johnny the Great-Hearted is a good fit here. That -2 giving all of your creatures 1/1 counters, Atraxa included, and each of your planeswalkers an additional loyalty counter. Seems like a natural fit. So a Johnny is the card I chose for Atraxa. I could have chosen dozens of cards for Atraxa, but the challenge that I had for myself was to limit myself to one card per pairing. So one card per commander, or one card to go with a War of the Spark commander. Next one I want to look at, Huatao. Huatao, Honored Physician. I don't have the card loaded up here, but what it does, it's a 3-mana 1/2. And on your turn, before your combat, you can tap it to take a creature from your graveyard and put it on top of your library. Hence why I paired it with Vivian's Grizzly. It's not necessarily a fast combo, but by having the Grizzly here, you can pay 4 mana and draw the card that you just put back on top of your library. So you don't miss out on any draws by using Huatao's abilities. Tezzeret, Master of the Bridge, it's gotta go in Breya. It's the big money card of the set so far because it's only a buy a box promo. You're not gonna get it in a booster pack. And that first line of text there, creatures and planeswalker spells you cast have affinity for artifacts. That is huge. It is scary. This guy is going to be a monster in our format. Mordrolfa is currently holding a spot for Vivian's Arcbow. This legendary artifact says X, tap and discard a card. We get to look at the top X cards of our library. And if we find a creature with X or less converted mana cost, we can put that into play. And of course, why Muldrotha? Because whatever card we discard to Vivian's Arcbow, we can play again with Muldrotha. So we're essentially ignoring the discard, the negative of the discard a card cost in this ability. Tolzmir, Friend to Wolves. It doesn't matter if you have the new Tolzmir as your commander or the old Tolzmir as your commander. These two go together very, very nicely, so play Tolzmir with Tolzmir. No reason not to. My Rignar Krav deck, because I have life gain every turn, and every turn that means I'm generating a couple of extra tokens. Nicol-bolas Citadel. Rignar and Krav give me the life I need to be able to cast cards off the top of my deck, and it gives me the tokens to try to take advantage of that tap ability, sacrificing 10 non-land permanents to make each of my opponents lose 10 life. Yes. So far, it's a low cost. This one is probably too expensive for standard, as powerful an ability as it is. 6 mana is very high for standard, so as long as we commander players don't go too nuts over the card, it should stay reasonably affordable. A card that we are going nuts for, Massacre Girl. 4/4 human assassin with menace, so pretty good attacker to start. But imagine if one of the lands you play in her deck is Forbidden Orchard. a land that you can tap for any color of mana, but you reward one of your opponents with a 1/1 spirit token. Now imagine you've already done this 4 or 5 times, and then you finally cast your Massacre Girl. Well, she'll come in, -1/-1 to the board, kills all the spirit tokens, and that's 4 or 5 more -1/-1 triggers to the board, which should wipe everything clean. I'm wondering if she'd be a good vehicle commander, actually. Because if your vehicles aren't creatures, you play those in the early turns, you drop your Massacre Girl, tap her to turn one of your vehicles into a creature and swing in for damage. Seems decent. It's not necessarily like the biggest move, but it might be something to consider. Might be an interesting build. I might try it. I'll let you know if it's any good or not, and if it is, or at least fun to play, then I'll share that with you. Uzuri, Claw of Progress. I'm going to pair that up with Polymbright Druid. Because Uzuri, you gain an experience counter every time you drop a creature that's power 2 or less. Polymbright Druid just happens to be power 2 or less. Proliferate can proliferate experience counters as well as any other +1/+1 counters already on the battlefield. So Uzuri's out, you've already gotten at least 1 counter. And Cat. So as I was saying, Uzuri's already generated you a experience counter. You already have some +1/+1 counters on your creatures. Polymbright Druid means 2 more experience counters. 1 from Uzuri's trigger, 1 from the Proliferate. And all your creatures on the board get a little bigger too. Storev. Says here we've got a 5/4 trample for 4 mana. I like the rate, it's a good rate. And whenever Storev deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, return to your hand a creature or planeswalker card in your graveyard that wasn't put there this combat. It doesn't matter how the creature got into the graveyard, it doesn't matter how long the creature's been in your graveyard. It gets it back into your hand. So, Bottomless Pit, anybody? Randomly discard a creature on your upkeep. Swing with Storev, get the creature back. Why not? Zedru the Great-Hearted. It says 2 cards, but Role Inversion or Role Reversal. I don't think they were sure what the actual name of the card is. I'm still not entirely sure, although I feel like Role Reversal is the official name, as that one's got an estimated price to it, whereas everything else does not. Exchange control of 2 target permanents that share a permanent type. So, someone's got their Urborg and Cabal Coffers combo going. Why not swap one of your islands for the Cabal Coffers for 3 mana? And of course, Zedru is the place to do it, because it also gives you that extra life gain and card draw. Prime Speaker Vanifar. Neoform is a good redundancy in that deck. Why not? It's like 2 mana, and you basically get the same ability as Prime Speaker Vanifar's tap ability. But you can do it the turn you cast Neoform, unlike Prime Speaker Vanifar, where you have to wait around the table, or at least have some sort of haste enabler. Depala. Any Depala players out there? I don't currently run her, but if you are running our Dwarven Pilot, we have a new vehicle for her, and that is Museum Tank. What's cool about this is that even if you don't have a dwarf or any other creature that can crew this thing, and it crews 1, by the way, so pretty much any creature can do it, but even if you don't have a creature or you choose to crew something else, what's cool about the Museum Tank is that by casting other vehicle cards or any other non-creature spells, say mana rocks, what have you, gives this guy a +1/+1 boost and turns it into an artifact creature. So I like the flexibility here. Because it's a vehicle, that means somebody board wipes, it stays on the board, and then you play another vehicle, and this swings in for 4. Or better if you have other spells. Evolution Sage, Lord Windgrace. This is not an original idea. This is an obvious one. Everyone's already seen this. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, proliferate. So Lord Windgrace has a -2 that says bring 2 lands from your graveyard to play. Evolution says proliferate. In this case, you'll be proliferating twice and putting those 2 counters right back on Lord Windgrace. That's 2 free lands. That's 2 free lands, straight up. Edgar Markov, Cruel Celebrant, Bread and Butter. Cruel Celebrant, 2 mana, a 1/2 with Edgar Markov gives you another 1/1. That 1/1 dies. You get the Aristocrats trigger. Each opponent losing a life and you gaining a life. It's too good a fit. You can't not do this. There are other Orzhov Aristocrat strategies out there, but this one is the most obvious. But don't let this be the only place you put a Cruel Celebrant. Hapatra and Courage in Crisis. Now, Hapatra works with -1/-1 counters, so why Courage in Crisis? A sorcery that puts a +1/+1 counter on a creature. Well, my thinking is that with Hapatra, let's say you've already spread out, let's say there's like 4 or 5 creatures out there that already have -1/-1 counters because of your natural line of play. You cast Courage in Crisis. You put a +1/+1 counter on one of your creatures. Then you get to proliferate everything. So whatever creature you put the +1/+1 counter on gets a second one. All your opponents who have -1/-1 counters on their creatures adds an additional -1/-1 creature on their creature. Sorry. And that means that you get 4 or 5 Hapatra triggers, which means you get a bunch of snakes for 3 mana. Added bonus if you just happen to have your serrated arrows with a counter still on it on the battlefield when you cast this. Mayhem Devil. Whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, Mayhem Devil deals 1 damage to any target. While Prosh not only gives you a bunch of sacrifice fodder every time you cast it, but it can sacrifice creatures. So yeah, Mayhem Devil goes right into Prosh. Easy. So Lassito Plating. 2 mana, amass 1, and you and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn. And I'm playing it in Jalera Master Polymorphist. It's a good fit, honestly. What's nice about this is that if somebody targets you or one of your creatures, this is a counterspell. For all intents and purposes, making the target illegal. This is essentially a counterspell. And it gives you a 1/1 token creature which you can sacrifice into Jalera. Jalera says sacrifice a creature, and you keep flipping cards from the top of your deck until you hit a non-legendary creature and put that into play. What's nice about Lassito Plating is that because it is an instant rather than a creature, if while polymorphing something else I hit the Lassito Plating, well, I keep going until I get something better. So this is a great add to this deck. Ob Nixilis the Hate Twisted. Of course it's going into Nekasar. Of course. Whenever an opponent draws a card, Ob Nixilis deals 1 damage to that player. So yeah, of course. Of course. I don't even have to explain this one. Flux Channeler and Mizzix of the Osmotics. So you play this in Mizzix. It's a 2/2 creature. You don't usually play a lot of creature spells in Mizzix, but whenever you cast a non-creature spell and Mizzix has a lot of non-creature spells, you get to proliferate. Of course, what you'll be proliferating are experience counters, which every time you cast the instant or sorcery, as long as it's more than the number of counters you already have, you get to add another one. So stack your triggers, you get your counter from Mizzix, and then you proliferate. So you're getting 2 counters. If you have both creatures out, you're getting 2 counters every time you cast your instants or sorceries. Gideon Blackblade. I'd like to put him into my Teshar Ancestors Apostle deck. I do run one. I didn't know about the combo until recently, so I haven't really built a good Teshar deck in real life with the combo yet. I just play a lot with the interactions that Teshar provides. But the reason I would want to put Gideon in here, of course, is because Gideon is a historic permanent, and it gives us an indestructible 4/4 beater on our turn. The fact that we can +1, and it says up to one other target creature you control gains your choice of Vigilance, Lifelink, or Indestructible until the end of turn. So it could be a way to protect our Tishar. It could be a way to gain some extra life. That +1 is potentially handy in this deck. Domri, Anarch of Bolas. The art's not showing up, but the card text here is: creatures you control get 1/0. You can add a red or a green to make your creature spells uncounterable. Well, it doesn't. You can add a red or green and make your creature spells uncounterable this turn. Seems like a good fit for Xenagos, especially since, let's say you drop you drop some sort of like 4/5 beater, like 4 power beater. It's 5 power because of Domri, and Xenagos doubles that, of course, to 10. So lots of synergy here, actually. Also, Xenagos can buff up one of your creatures, and in the second main phase, if you have not used the +1 ability on Domri, you can use the -2 to clear something off of the board. Nicol-bolas the Ravager. If you are playing a discard style Nicol-bolas, I have to stave off the cats today. They are obnoxious. Anyways, if you are playing a Nicol-bolas the Ravager deck and it's focused on discard, making your opponents discard their cards, then Davriel is your natural add to that deck, because not only can it force additional discards a couple of times, not super often, but enough times, but it can deal out some damage. So if you're going to play Davriel, I play it in a Nicol-bolas discard deck. Multani, Yavimai's Avatar. What's nice about Multani is that you can let Multani die and use her activated ability to retrieve her from the graveyard. And why is that important? Well, Nissa, who shakes the world, is the card I would add to a Multani deck. Whenever you tap a forest for mana, add an additional green mana. Strong, double up your mana in a mono green deck. You can +1, put 3 counters on a non-creature line you control, and it becomes a 0/0 elemental with 3 counters on it with Vigilance. That's still land. Vigilance and haste, in fact. But the reason Nissa fits here is because, let's say Multani ended up in your graveyard at some point, somebody murdered it or what have you, and you've got some animated lands and someone wants to wipe. Well, you can activate Multani to save those lands, put the lands right back into your hand, and put the Multani back into your hand from your graveyard. So they pair up really nicely, and if you do manage to get to that -8, oh boy. I'm calling him Dr. Phil. I know there's a specific pronunciation that's commonly used online here, but I'm just going to call him Dr. Phil. I actually like Dr. Phil in my Jalera deck. I'd rather put this guy in there rather than run him as a commander, because he's a bit of a one-trick pony. The only card that anyone's found so far that really combos with him is Proteus Staff. So if you're running Philip as a commander, you'll be running Proteus Staff, and that is... it draws you 2 cards, but I don't think of it as something that's good. But it is a combo that's there. If you're going to run Dr. Phil as a commander, you run Proteus Staff. I personally would rather run Dr. Phil as Sacrifice Father for Jalera, but that is just me and how I like to think. Marin, I have a Liliana Death Horde General that I would want to add to my Marin deck. I don't have it, but if I get Dread Horde General, Liliana, going in Marin. All the synergies are there. Whenever a creature you control dies, you draw a card. Your creatures die all the time in Marin. Each player sacrifices 2 creatures, yourself included, which means you're drawing 2 cards. Everyone else is losing their creatures too. That -9 is powerful. I wouldn't necessarily go for it. Liliana, what's bringing her to the game here is that -4 and that static ability. But you never know. The Wanderer in Firesong and Sunspeaker. Because Firesong and Sunspeaker will be playing a lot of spells and effects that deal damage to every creature on the board. The Wanderer is a way to protect your creatures. Of course, being able to -2 and exile your opponent's creatures outright if you don't have your damage spells is a nice feature as well. This, I have to admit, I have internet, I apologize for this one. Time Wipe in Grand Arbiter, Augustin the 4th. This is a 3-mana board wipe in Grand Arbiter. You bring your Grand Arbiter back to your hand, wipe everything else out. Because Grand Arbiter's spell reduction, it reduces your blue spells by 1 and your white spells by 1, which means it reduces the cost of your Time Wipe by 2. So white, blue, wipe the board, and Grand Arbiter is in your hand, ready to cast again for his base cost of 4. Ral, Storm Conduit. Seems like a fun add to the Will and Rowan Kenriff decks. So if you happen to be playing the partner Planeswalker commanders, slot in Ral, why not? Because Will likes instants and sorceries, so Will likes instants, Rowan likes sorceries, Ral likes both. So I think they'd be the best of friends here. If you are running a Rick Smithy's Seafood and all the giant sea monsters, then play Kiora in that deck. I play a combo version of the deck, so I would not run her in my version of a Rick Smithy's, but if you are in fact playing the sea monster version of the deck, this is 3 mana. You draw a card whenever you play one of your sea monsters, and that -1 untap target permanent. Hey wait, untap a Rick Smithy's? Get a couple extra mana from that? Yeah, do it. This is specifically for my Anamaru deck. I play Anamaru Super Friends. Kai's Ghost Form. It's a good add. You just kind of throw this on Anamaru herself, so you get to continuously use that -1 until you take down to 0 at no consequence, basically. Once it takes down to 0, Kai's Ghost Form will trigger and put Anamaru back onto the battlefield fresh and ready to go again. Vraska's Finisher. Thought this was a funny little card. When this enters the battlefield, destroy a creature or planeswalker an opponent controls that was dealt damage this turn. I'm slotting it into Gorm and Virtues, because Gorm is definitely going to be dealing damage to a creature, because he's forcing creatures to block him. And Virtues is usually going to go after a player, but if one of my other creatures in that deck just happens to poke at a planeswalker, then Vraska's Finisher can do the rest of the job from there. And Dreadhorde Anarchist, a good fit in Zada Hedron Grinder. I've seen this deck played a couple of times. I don't have one of these, but one thing I have noticed is that there are a lot of 1-mana cantrips in this deck. So even if you never ever boost up Dreadhorde Anarchist's power, you should be able to recast a lot of those 1-mana cantrips, aka like target creature gains haste, draw a card, you cast that on Zada, copy it 12 times, whatever, depending on how many creatures are out there, draw 12 cards. So yeah, play that with the Dreadhorde Anarchist, or if you do play something that boosts his power, then you can pair that up with, say, like any red spell that boosts power and make your team swole. So, Dreadhorde Anarchist, let's read that. A 1/3 trample, when it attacks, you may cast target instant or sorcery card with converted mana cost less than or equal to Dreadhorde Anarchist's power from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. So yeah, you can do a lot of stuff with that, and I think Zada is the place to do it, because Zada plays a lot of 1-mana instants and sorceries to start with, and if you do manage to pump up the Dreadhorde, it gives you access to more powerful spells that you can recast on the attack step. Those are my initial pairings so far. Hope you stuck with me through that and learned a few cool tricks, and maybe have a few original ideas for yourselves. I am trying to pair up a few more cards here. I'm trying to, well, not duplicate any pairings, so if I've already used a commander, like for example Muldrotha, then I'm not putting another card with Muldrotha in this series. This might be my last video for a while, in fact. I will be leaving town for a few days, so it might be about a week or so before I get back to this series, but these are some of my early ideas. Let me know what you all think, and I will see you all again next time.